You're the one who always says, "I'm fine," when you're falling apart inside. The one who apologizes for crying. Fawn, who can't rest without guilt. This is your Fawn response. And it started long before you knew what it was. Picture this, a child, maybe 7 years old, sitting at the top of the stairs in the dark. Downstairs, voices rise and fall like waves, crashing against rocks. A door slams. Glass shatters. That child's heart pounds so loud they're sure someone will hear it, but no one comes. So the child learns something important in that moment. They learn to read the room before entering it, to measure the weight of every word before speaking, to become so small, so quiet, so helpful that maybe, just maybe, the storm will pass them by. They learn to disappear without leaving. This is where it begins. Not with a single moment, but with 1,000 small erasures. And by the time that child becomes you, you've become so good at vanishing that you didn't even notice you're gone. Music, this is the Fawn response. And if you've never heard that term before, you're not alone. Most people know about fight, flight, and freeze, the 3 famous reactions to threat. But there's a 4th one, quieter and more dangerous. Fawn. Fawning is what happens when fighting back isn't safe, running away isn't possible, and freezing won't protect you. So instead, you adapt. You please. You become whatever the dangerous person needs you to be. You learn to read tiny expressions like a second language. You'll figure out needs before they're spoken. You make yourself useful, pleasant, agreeable, anything to avoid becoming a And here's the thing that no one tells you. What saves you as a child can trap you as an adult. Because that 7-year-old on the stairs grew up. They became the person who can't say now without feeling guilty. The one who explains everything. The one who apologizes for existing. The one who gives and gives and gives until there's nothing left, and then feels selfish for being empty. They became the person who jumps at compliments, who can't accept help, who feels safer in chaos than in peace. The person who's always scanning the room, reading the energy, adjusting their personality, like a thermostat, to keep everyone else so comfortable. They became you, and you might be wondering, why? Why do I do? Why can't I just stop? Why does rest feel like rebellion? Why does receiving feel like theft? The answer lies in understanding what happened to the child. Not just what they experienced, but what they learned. What they had to become to survive. And more importantly, what they're still doing decades later, in a world that's no longer that dangerous. So let's uncover this together. Let's look at the 7 signs of the Fawn response, where they come from, and what they're costing, because recognizing it is the first step toward getting yourself back. The first sign is what I call the solitary retreat. You disappear. Not physically, you're still in the room, but mentally, you're gone. You're that person who says, "I need some air 8 parties," and never comes back. The one who feels exhausted after social interactions, even good ones. The one who needs to be alone to feel like yourself again. But here's what's really happening. You're not just introverted. You're protecting yourself. When you wears milk, your emotions were too much for the adults around you. Your sadness was inconvenient. Your anger was dangerous. Your joy was too loud, so you learn that feelings are safer when you're alone. That connection comes with conditions, that the price of belonging is hiding yourself. So you built an inner world where you could be real, and an outer world where you performed. And the gap between those 2 worlds, that's where I'll live now. As an adult, this looks like canceling plans at the last minute backhouse. You just can't. Feeling drained after social events, even ones preferring texting over calling, emailing over meeting, having a social battery that runs out faster than everyone else's, needing hours or days alone to recover from being around people, feeling like you're performing Gavin with close friends, feeling grief when plans get cancelled. This isn't introversion, this is protection. This is a nervous system that learned that other people are unpredictable, and solitude is the only guaranteed safety, and you're not broken for this. You are not antisocial or cold or weird. Your rage is still protecting that child who learned that showing up fully meant getting hurt. That child who discovered that the safest place was inside their own head, where no one could reach them. But here's the cost. You're lonely. Even when you're surrounded by people, because no one knows the real. How could they? You've spent your whole life making sure they don't. And that loneliness feeds into Theskin's sign. Because when you've learned that connection is dangerous, you develop a very specific strategy to make it safe. You become the peacekeeper, the harmonizer, the one who will do anything I mean anything to avoid conflict. This is harmonious. You are overly. You agree when you disagree. YOLO at jokes that aren't funny. You say, it's fine when it's not fine. You smooth over tension before it even fully. You are the emotional janitor of fevery space you enter. Constant like cleaning up feelings that aren't even yours. This started in a home where conflict was terrifying. Maybe your parents fought, and you learned to be the buffer. Maybe one parent was explosive, and you learned to be the stabilizer. Maybe emotions were so big and scary that you became the one who made everything okay. You learned that your job was to manage their people's feelings, that your value came from keeping the peace, that love was something you earned by being easy, agreeable, low-maintenance. So you became the child who never complained, who always said, I'm fine, who smiled through their own pain, to make sure no one else was uncomfortable. And now, as an adult, you say yes when you mean no, apologize for things that aren't your fault, downplay your own needs to avoid seeming demanding, feel responsible for other people's emotions, can't stand tension or awkwardness, immediately try to fix things when someone's upset, feel guilty when you disappoint anyone, even slightly, struggle to express disagreement or would rather hurt yourself than hurt someone else's feelings. You've become so good at reading theorem that you've forgotten how to read. You know what everyone else needs, but you have no idea what you. And when someone asks, what do you want? You freeze because you genuinely don't know. You've spent so long being what others need that you've lost track of who you are. This is the cost of peace at any price. You get the harmony, but you lose yourself in it. You become a background character in your own life, endlessly accommodating, endlessly adjusting, endlessly erasing your own edges to fit into someone else's shape. And because you've become so good at erasing yourself, you develop a verbal habit that gives you away every single time. It's so automatic, you probably don't even notice you're doing it, but everyone around you does. This is the apology reflex. You say sorry for everything, for existing, for speaking, for taking up space. You apologize when Simeon bumps into you. You apologize for apologizing. You say sorry before asking a question, before stating an opinion, before expressing a need. Sorry. Can I just ... Sorry. I was just wondering ... Sorry to bother you. But ... Sorry. I know this is stupid. But ... This didn't come from nowhere. This came from a childhood where your needs were treated as burdens, where asking for something meant being told you were too much, too needy, too demanding, where your very existence felt like unburdened. Maybe you asked for help and were met with a sigh. Maybe you expressed a need and were told, not no, I'm busy. Maybe you cried and were told to stop being dramatic. Maybe you were excited and were told to calm down, so you learned that you were too much, that your presence was a disruption, that the safest way to exist was to apologize for it. And now, as an adult, you apologize before speaking in meetings. You say sorry when asking for what you're entitled to. You feel guilty for having needs. You minimize your own pain. It's not that bad. Others have it worse. You apologize for crying, for being upset, for having feelings. You say sorry when someone else makes amnesty. You feel like you're always in the way. You can't ask for help without feeling like a burden. Here's what's really happening. Every time you say sorry, you're strengthening the belief that you're an inconvenience. You're telling yourself and everyone around you that your existence requires an apology, that you need permission to take up space. But you don't. You never did. You were not too much. You were never too much. You were a child with needs, and those needs were valid. The problem wasn't you. The problem was that the adults around you couldn't meet those, and instead of acknowledging their own limitations, they made you feel like the problem. So you learned to apologize for being human, and you're still doing it. And because you feel like such a burden, you develop a very specific relationship with helping and being helped. You become the person everyone can count on, the reliable one, the helper. But when it comes to receiving help, that's a different story. This is the helper's burden. You are always there for everyone else, but you can't let anyone be there for you. Your therapist friend, the one people call at 2 a.m., the one who drops everything to help. But when you're struggling, you suffer in silence. You can't accept. It feels wrong. It feels weak. It feels like you're failing at the one thing you're supposed to be good at, being strong. This pattern was created in a childhood where you had to be the strong one. Maybe you were parentified, forced to take care of younger siblings or even your own parents. Maybe you had to be the emotional support for adults who should have been supporting you. Maybe you learned that your role in the family was to give, not to receive. You became the caretaker, the responsible, the one who had it together. And the message was clear. Your job is to help. Other people's job is to need help. There's no room for you to be on the receiving end. So you learned that needing help is weakness, that asking for support is selfish, that your value comes from what you can do for others, not from who you are. And now, as an adult, you can't ask for help without feeling guilty. You'd rather struggle alone than burden someone else. You feel uncomfortable when people try to help you. You minimize your own problems. I'm fine. It's not a big deal. You're a super independent. You do You feel like you owe people when they help you. You can't receive without immediately trying to give back. You feel weak or broken when you need support. You're exhausted from carrying everything alone. Here's the truth. This isn't strength. This is survival. Real strength includes the ability to be vulnerable, to ask for help, to let people in. But you never learned that. You learned that being vulnerable is dangerous, that needing people means they can hurt you, that the only person you can truly rely on is yourself. So you became an island, self-sufficient, impenetrable, alone. And the cost? You're drowning. But no one knows best. You've become so good at looking fine that even you believe it. Sometimes, and because you can't focus on your own needs, you develop a pattern that looks like selflessness but is actualized self-abandonment. You become so focused on everyone else that you completely lose sight of. This is altruistic neglect. You think about everyone's problems, except your own. You know exactly what your friend needs, what your partner needs, what your coworker needs. But if somebody only asks what you need, blank, nothing, you genuinely don't know. This is what happens when a child's needs are consistently ignored or dismissed. When you express a need and it's met with indifference or, worse, irritation, you'll learn something devastating. Your needs didn't matter. Or, more accurately, other people's needs matter more than yours, so you stopped having needs. Or at least you stopped acknowledging them. You learned to push them down, ignore them, override them. You learned to function when empty, to keep giving when you have nothing left, to prioritize everyone else's well-being while your own. As an adult, this looks like a not knowing what you want or need, feeling selfish when you think about yourself, constantly putting others first, even at your own expense, ignoring your own hunger, tiredness, pain, feeling guilty for spending money on yourself, not having hobbies or interests because you're too busy helping others, feeling uncomfortable and attention is on you. Not knowing how to relax or do things just for pleasure. Feeling like you're only value in what you do for others. You've a become so focused on others that you've lost your internal compass. You don't know what brings you joy because you've never prioritized finding out. You don't know what you need because you've never been allowed to need. And here's the cruelest part. You think this makes you a good person. You think this is love, this is service, this is virtue. Beauty it's not. It's self-erasure. The slow disappearance of a person who was never low to matter. Because real love, real service, real virtue, they don't require you to disappear. They don't team in that you sacrifice yourself on the altar of everyone else's comfort. They include you. They make space for you. They honor your humanity as much as someone else's. But you never learned that. You learned that love is one-directional, that care flows outward, never inward, that your job is to be the giver, never this receiver. So you give and give until there's nothing left, until you're a shell, until you can't remember what you were before you became whatever Yanni else needed. And because you've learned that your value comes from what to do, not who you are, you develop an exhausting relationship with achievement and perfection. You can't just do them. You have to do them perfectly best. Anything less feels like failure. This is perfectionist idealism. You can't do anything halfway. Everything has to be perfect. Every mail has to be flawless. Every projectors to exceed expectations. Every interaction has to go smoothly, because if it's not perfect, you failed. And if you failed, you're worthless. This comes from a childhood where love was conditional, where approval had to be earned, where being good wasn't enough. You had to be the best where mistakes were met with disappointment, criticism, or worse. So you learn that your value is based on performance, that you're only as good as your last achievement, that love and acceptance are things you have to constantly earn, and one mistake can cost you everything. You became a student, the overachiever, the one who never messed up, not because he loved excellence, but because you were terrified of failure, because failure meant rejection, and rejection meant abandonment. And now, as an adult, you can't start things unless you know you'll do them perfectly. You'll procrastinate because the fear of imperfection is paralyzing. You overwork yourself to meet impossible standards. You feel like a fraud even when you're You can't celebrate your events because you immediately focus on what's next. You're terrified of making mistakes. You take criticism as confirmation that you're not good now. You feel like you're always one mistake away from being exposed. You can't rest, because rest feels like lazy. Here's what perfectionism is. It's not about excellence, it's about fear. It's the belief that if you can just be perfect enough, you'll finally be safe. You'll finally be loved. You'll finally be enough. Beauty's a trap, because perfection is impossible. So you're chasing something you can never catch. And every time you fall short, it confirms your deep fear that you're not enough. And the cruelest irony, the people who love you don't need you to be perfect. But you can't believe that because of the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally didn't. They made their love dependent on your performance. Sano, you think everyone does? You think love is something you earn. But real love is something you receive. Not because you're perfect, but because you're human. Because you exist. Rosu matter. But you never learned that. So you keep performing, keep achieving, keep perfecting, hoping that one day it will finally be enough. And because you've spent your entire life managing everyone else's emotions, while hiding your own, some of things eventually has to give. All thoughts feelings you've been pushing down Dayton disappear. They build up, and eventually, they erupt. This is the final sign. Suppressed emotional eruptions. You hold everything in until you can't, then you explode. Or you break down. Or you have a panic attack in a parking lot over something small. Because it's not really about that small thing. It's about everything you've been holding for years. You cry to strangers, but not to friends. You share your deepest pain on the internet, but not with your partner. You have emotional breakdowns alone in your car, in Desawar, anywhere no one can see. Daikosu learned that your emotions are too much, that they're a burden, that other people can have feelings but you can't. Your job is to hold space for everyone else's emotions, not to have your own. So you suppress, you push down, you smile through it, until your body can't hold it anymore, and it all comes out in ways you can't control. So let's step back and look at what's really happening here. These 7 scenes: the solitary retreat, the harmonious appeasement, the apology reflex, the helper's burden, the altruistic neglect, the perfectionist, the suppressed emotional options. They're not separate issues, they're all branches of the same root. And that root is this: you weren't tracing yourself, you were raising your... You became the emotional talker of the people who were supposed to care for you. You learned to manage their feelings, anticipate their needs, regulate their emotions. You became the parent to your own parents. This is called parentification. And it doesn't just change your it changes your entire nervous system. It changes how you're relate to yourself, to others, to the cost of fawning isn't just text housed in though. You are exhausted. It's not just loneliness though. You are lonely. The real cost is this: you forgot how to be a child. You forgot how to play, how to need, how to rest, how to simply exist without earning your existence. You forgot how to be imperfect and still beloved, how to be vulnerable and still safe, how to take up space without apologizing for it. You forgot you, they're all you, the one who existed before you learned to disappear, the one who had needs and wants and feelings and the one who was loud and messiahned, imperfect and gloriously unapologetically. That person is still in there, buried under years of fawning, under layers of performance and people-pleasing and perfectionism, but they're still there, waiting. But here's what they didn't tell you. Here's what you need to know. The child you buried didn't die. They're still there, still waiting, still hoping Phaeton Day someone will come back for them. And here's the truth. No one's coming. No one's coming to rescue that child except you. Healing from the fawn response isn't about fixing yourself. You were never broken. You were it. You were surviving. And you did an incredible job. You made it here. You're still standing. But survival mode is never meant to be permanent. And the strategies that saved you then are trapping you now. So healing isn't about fixing. It's about recognizing. It's about seeing the pattern clearly, understanding where it came from, and making a conscious choice about whether you want to keep living this way. It's about 5 things. First, recognition. You just did this. You saw yourself in these 7 signs. You named what's been happening. That's huge. That's the big. Second, feeling the anger. Yes, anger. Because you should be angry. You are a child. You deserved protection, care, unconditional love, and you didn't get it. That's not okay. And you're allowed to be angry about it. You're allowed to grieve what you didn't get. Third, grieving that childhood you deserved, but didn't have. Grieving the parent you needed but didn't get. Grieving the person you might have been if you hadn't had to spend all your energy surviving. Fourth, reclaiming your needs. Your needs, they always did. You are aloeto, need. You are allowed to want. You're allowed to take up space. And fifth, setting boundaries without guilt, without apology, without explaining. Just know, I can't. That doesn't work for. Full stop. So here's your permission slip. Read this as many times as you need to. You are allowed to rest not because you earned it, but because you are human, and humans need rest. You are allowed to need. You are not too much. You were never too much. You're allowed to say no without explanation, without guilt, without apology. You are allowed to be imperfect, to make mistakes, to not have it all together. You are allowed to receive, to let people help you, to let people love you without immediately trying to earn it or repay it. You are allowed to take up space, to have opinions, to disagree, to be inconvenient. You are allowed to have feelings, to cry, to be angry, to decide, to not be fine. You are allowed to prioritize yourself. That's not selfish. That's survival. You didn't deserve with a pen to you. You were just a child who needed safety and got chaos, who needed love and got conditions. One needed protection and had to protect yourself. But you're not that child anymore. You're an adult now. And the adult you were now, they can go back. They can't protect that child. They can say thievings. No one said. They can give love. No one gave. You never had adulthood, but you still have a future. And this time, you get to write it. If this resonated with you, you're no. Millions of people are walking around with this same pattern, thinking they're the only one, thinking but you're not broken. Your rage is still operating from an old program that doesn't serve you anymore. So here's where to start. First, journal. Ask yourself, what did I need as a child that I didn't get? What did I have to come to survive? What am I still doing that I don't need to do anymore? Second, notice. Start paying attention to when you fawn. What triggers it? What triggers it? What situations make you immediately go into people-pleasing mode? And third, practice. Say no to one small thing this week. Just one. Notice how it. Notice the guilt. Notice the fear. And do it anyway. This is shadow work. It's uncomfortable. It's painful. But it's how you come home to yourself. Drop a comment if you recognize yourself in this. You don't have to share your story if you're not ready. Just I seem. That's enough. Because when we name it together, we break the silence that kept us small. We break the isolation that made us think we're alone. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, be gentle with yourself. You are doing through work that child needed someone to do.